Welcome to Meaningful Interviews. I'm here with Rabbi Elchonon and Rabbi Elchonon has a tremendous yichus pedigree. I personally believe met once when I was a Bocher student, your uncle, I guess, Rabbi Chaim Dalfin, who lived around the corner from the Lubavitch Yeshiva on Ocean Parkway here in Brooklyn in the Flatbush section. And of course, his kesher and your family's kesher and your father and your grandfather, your great-grandfather to the Lubavitch Rebbeim is noted. And particularly that your great-grandfather helped the previous Rebbe, the Rebbe Rayatz, leave Russia. And your family is very much hooked up to Chabad. I don't know if they originally come from Chabad. I think they were really Litvish as far as I know. But there was obviously a strong kesher going back to Russia. That when I read when I listened to the tape of your father, right? It's your father, the
grandfather, Rabbi
yeah,
Poupko.
your grandfather. I was very moved. I was very moved. I have to listen to it once or twice again because the way he spoke as a leader, I think of the RCA and the one who headed the project to go there to Russia with Russian Jewry. It was very, very touching for someone to get up in those years and proclaim, that who is like the man behind the Rebbe's, Lubavitcher Rebbe's, in the face of the Litvish world and the RCA world and everything else. I thought it was very, very special. And you yourself are a rabbi for 11 generations of rabbinic in your family. You've written several books and hundreds of articles, been translated to 5 different languages. So your writing is known. I've been following you for quite a while. And what caused me to ask you now to come on for an interview is because we had in Lubavitch what we call the tunnel fiasco of about 3 weeks ago, which was really a skirmish of some young men who just are carrying on and trying to do what they want without permission, and without permission, both not just of what they call the anti-Mashiachistim, but even of the Mashiachistim. I mean, no one justifies vandalism, terrorism, and Mashigas. But be that as may, and Baruch Hashem, I'm happy to report that although there's videos still circulating of Wildkeiten, of wild, barbaric but ridiculous behavior, nevertheless, it's coming to a head. And the judge gave a ruling this past Friday, which I don't know if you're aware of it, maybe you are, but the implication, the way, again, I'm not a lawyer, but the way I read it is that there will be more civility brought to the table here by all parties. But what caught my attention particularly is that you said in your article, I'm coming to you as a Litvak, and I don't really think you're a real Litvak, but I would like to hear a little bit about what you meant by that, if you're serious about it, and because this is something important. And just one more thing before I let you please respond. The Yeshiva World News, which is Litvish oriented, Lakewood, they carried my clip that I made, which went viral, has 14,000 hits already, Baruch Hashem. And again, maybe it's coming from me. I'm a Lubavitcher, I don't hide the fact. I feel it has a certain slant, like, I told you so. I told you so. You're Mishigas with Mashiachism and all that stuff. I told you so. And, I would like to see, really, when I was a Bacher in Yeshiva many years ago, I wasn't as meshuggah as these guys that broke walls and all that, but I was a Hesa Bacher Lubavitcher, and had very passionate feelings. And as I began writing, I've been writing now 30 years, and I've been writing a lot about the relationship, compare and contrast of communities, the Rav, Rabbi Soloveitchik and the Rebbe, Rabbi Hutner and the Rebbe, Teravadas and Lubavitch, the Aguda and Chabad's coming out this week, and things like that. Some will say I mellowed, or Shlomo Karlbacher, I wrote about Shlomo, you know, I really, look to see where everyone's coming from. And I try to give the reader as objective as possible. You decide, I'll present to you the information. So what I would like to see, and I would like to, hear, if it's possible from your perspective, can we continue bridging the gap between the Litvish world and the Chassidish world, and in particularly the Chabad world, and how it stands today in face of this episode that blew up, but it brought out a Shabbos. I was in Flatbush Shabbos, and this person, and he just opened up to me. On one hand, he would like to come to a Farbrengen. He's not Chabad. He wears a gargle. Actually, he called himself Breslov. Okay, but the point is, intelligent person, yet his kids already are in Lakewood and they're more right wing. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that. Do you think there's an opening for it now more than not, or not? So go ahead, Rabbi, please.
So first of all, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for mentioning that history. It's interesting that my grandfather, when he spoke about going to Russia, and he went in 1961 when really nobody was going, he said that the people that he met at the airport, he said it is a recording from back then, he wasn't allowed to speak about, he said it was Lubavitcher businessmen. And I think it's so beautiful because, of course, we appreciate the work of Shluchim and rabbis, but it was actually Chasidei Chabad, who were businessmen, who were going in disguise. They were shluchim in their own way. They were going, the Rebbe sent them and because they had the business disguise, they were able to go, they were the first ones to go to Russia undercover, and we probably won't hear their stories ad hayom hazeh, but we know that exists. And I think that's just an example of times that, especially when there's an Eis Tzara for Klal Yisrael, we have to put away all the differences and we have to stand together. That's, I think, a good example. In terms of the story with the tunnels, look, it's an important story inside Chabad, but it for sure should not have been a story outside Chabad, and definitely not outside the Jewish world. And the fact that it brought such an explosion of anti-Semitism just proves you the old Ace of Soines Yaakov and the number of anti-Semites. In no way it should have, it could have been a story on CO Live, Yeshiva World, but for it to end up in the Guardian, Fox News, CNN, all these places, that was just a product of conspiracy theories and anti-Semitism, and that we have to stand together to condemn, because the anti-Semites that are ganging up now, that there's no chilukei deis, that's reprehensible. In terms of the behavior, I thought it was ironic because the Wildkeit you saw from those Bochum, which I hear are Israeli, is so parallel in many ways to the Wildkeit you see in Ponevezh when they fight, and this Wildkeit you'll see sometimes when the some Bochum and Satmar. So I think there was a sort of a elders solidarity moment there when Satmar put out a statement about it. I don't know if you saw, but they put out a statement of knowing that we all have the wild among us who just don't obey by the rules, and they don't ask, like you said, they don't ask for shus, they don't ask permission. So in that sense, I think that it brought us all together. It's a moment that brought us all together.
Which period are you talking about? Satmar, years ago or recently?
No. On the day that it went on in the media, Satmar tweeted a letter saying that they actually compared it to Neturei Karta, which have been giving them a bad rep recently. And they said, okay, look, the Chabad have these guys, we have Neturei Karta. They were looking to help people understand what they're going through with Neturei Karta, who claim to be Satmar, and then Satmar have to issue apologies and clarifications that it's not related to them. So They put together kind of a solidarity statement with Chabad. So I think it also sometimes the internal tzaras that we have remind us of also what we have in common and these struggles that we have. In terms of Litvish and Meshichism and whatever, so yeah, look, of course, the issue of Meshichism, I'm not fully familiar with what's going on inside Chabad, but it does sound like there's a rogue branch, and there's a group of people who think they can take everything into their own hands, and whether it's people who go and give imaginary dollars or have imaginary minyanim with the Rebbe walking among them. I think obviously, definitely as a Litvak, that's very concerning. Look, my heart is with the people. It's like Satmar said. Our hearts are with the older, responsible generation who have to deal with the Bachrim who think it's like the guys in Panovich who are throwing stenders in the middle of the basement.
Right. Okay, but here's the question. We both know that the last 70, 80 years, there has been a chilukei deis, a difference of opinion, and sometimes very not nice, okay, between Chabad and what they call sometimes Snagdim, Litvaks, Litvish.
Yeah.
Even when the Mashiach issue, way before this, let's talk about the 1970s, which I was part of. Satmar was attacking Chabad and Chabad.
Violent, yeah, sure.
Yeah, right. But I want to talk about the literature world. I really so my question is this just an excuse? In other words, when you say Poupko, when you say, I have, some real issues with, this Mashiachism, right? Let's take Mashiachism away. If can you take it away? And if you can take it away, do you see a way to bring the literature world and the Chabad world together today? Or is it the same? In other words, this is my point. When I was a bacher, when the Rebbe spoke about putting on tefillin, they attacked him with people. They attacked him then on tefillin. In Lag Bomer 1980, they attacked from Panovich. The Rav Shach came out. So what we see as the trajectory of the Chabad-Litvak relationship, it's like they find every time something else to attack. So now they attack they have what to attack, because this is some stuff is.
Let me pause for a second. Maybe I missed something. I have not seen I don't know who, Revelia Bervachvogel or Shmuel Kamenet or whoever they considered very Litvish. I haven't seen them say a word. So I don't think that there is some kind of stronger clash. Adarab, I think there are some people who miss the days of Rav Shach and the Rebbe and all these different Gedolim fighting, because it showed that there was substance there. It showed that people today, it's everyone's like Shalom, as long as we're eating the same food and it's Heimish, it's fine. And that's very much where we are today. I think people Satmar feel very. Actually, it's interesting. I saw Satmar just put out a statement where the Rebbe was vacationing in California and he had a chiyuv or something, so he davened in a local Lubavitch. That was, to me, a historical moment. That, the Satmar Rebbe needs a minyan, so he goes and he's the chazan in a Satmar shul, in a Chabad shul. So I think we're in a place. You can taina it's l'ra, it's l'toiva, but you don't have that ideological debate, fierce debate. You don't have that. There's no question that the kind of stuff we're seeing from the Meshichism today is far, far, far more disagreeable than the kinds of smaller disagreements that you had in, say, the 70s. But if you really want a hardcore Litvish Misnagdish, I don't know if it's for all audiences. I once asked, I don't know if I should say his name, a very, very Litvish Rosh Hashiva, and I asked him, what's this thing? These guys, they're pretending the Rebbe is alive. There's, how is this even considered permitted or within the scope of Judaism? And he told me, why is that different than guys believing that herring that was blessed by their Rebbe has tremendous koiches, and if they just push their way through the bleachers at the tish to get just a little bit piece of herring from the Rebbe, they'll have every shape of ruchnius worth more than learning. And so he said he's obviously a Litvak, and to him, all Chassidish movements are the same, But look, I think that the issue of Mashiachism has more consequences just from our history. We've seen it's a tougher one. But look, you're right. There are Litvaks who, no matter what's going to happen, are going to say, nah. You have a situation in today's door where we aren't really debating. We're just trying to get along, which has something nice to it. But obviously, there's something very unique to what's going on.
Right. Now, you mentioned to me on the phone or on the WhatsApp that you were a Rebbe in a yeshiva now. Is that
sixth grade Rebbe? Yeah.
Yeah. So is that like a Litvish yeshiva or a day school?
Modern Orthodox.
Modern Orthodox. So let's talk about that for a second. The relationship between the modern Orthodox world, YU, Young Israel, with Chabad. What's your view on that?
I think we're going to a place that of success for Chabad that no Litvish or modern Orthodox person ever imagined. I was speaking to someone who was part of more the conservative movement, and they're saying there's this, there's that. I said, look, your children and grandchildren will all be davening in Chabads, and your grandchildren, if they're from or even Jewishly related, they'll all be educated in Chabad schools. And I said, very simple. Here's why. Today, there's not a place in the world you can find with no Chabad shlich. Every single place. I said, yes. Now, every one of those shluchim who are filling every Jewish corner of this planet has at least 5 children that want to be shluchim. And they're not going anywhere. And so they're going to find places, just like you have Chabad houses turn into Chabad young professionals, Chabad this, Chabad this. I think it's an extraordinary success. And even modern Orthodox rabbis, I think, are going to be seeing, and even if you just look at Middle America, how many modern Orthodox rabbis are going to Middle America, but Chabad are. So I think there's no question that in 20, 30 years from now, 80% of Jewish organized life is going to be Chabad. And that's extraordinary.
That's a very interesting stat. Now, why do you think that is? In other words, do you see the Rebbe as the reason for that, or do you see it as the movement, the Shluchim, the organization? In other words, how much credit do you, based on what you just said now, how much credit do you give to the Rebbe being involved somehow from heaven and all of that to the success of Chabad today? Or do you see it simply as good CEOs of companies that know how to take things public?
Look, I mean, it's like if you ask to give my Litvish mashal, do you hold Rabbi Chaim Dalfin to be responsible for all the Litvish yeshivas? He yeah, in a way, yes, right? He started a certain way, and that took off. Does it mean he's involved in every yeshiva, or that he would approve of every yeshiva? No. So I think the Rebbe was extraordinary in setting up this brilliant system that works, that hasn't worked for others. I knew not on Moscow there's only the Shevach, but I had the exclusive knowing Rav Noach Weinberg of Esha Torah. He had a dream, and he's going to set up a yeshiva, and people are going to go, and this and that. But how many communities have a Esha Torah rabbi today?
Right.
Not so many. So I think that the Rebbe was extraordinary in his ability to harness the power of Chasidus and his knowledge of the world, knowing what knowing what's going on in this world, speaking multiple languages, knowing how to get logistics going, and there's no question he is the father of this movement, and he's done a lot. Now, I'll tell you another thing just from the previous generation. I knew Rav Zelig Epstein. He was from Slonim, and he was Altamir. He said that back in Europe before the Holocaust, there were in Litvish areas there were more Chasidei Chabad than Misnagdim. Meaning, I can't tell you. I'd like to say this is amazing, but I can't tell you that this is so much better than what was done in Europe. Meaning, Chabad in Europe also spread like wildfire. Definitely among the Eastern European Lithuania, Belarus, Russia. So what they did there was also extraordinary. But it's a world that disappeared under the Soviet curtain.
Now, going back to your ancestors, your parents, grandparents, your uncle, particularly, again, I don't know if anyone had as close as a relation to the Rebbe as your uncle Rabbi Chaim Yitzchak, but did you ever speak to him about that?
So he has a double kesher because he married a Schneerson.
Right. I forgot to, yeah.
So he has, I think he has a Sefer Torah of the Mittel Rebbe that in their school there. So there's definitely he has much more in terms of the yichus. But in terms of my family, it goes back. My great grandfather was the Rav of a city called Saratov. I don't know if you know. There's a city in Russia.
I do know.
His name was Yaakov Moshe Sapir. He grew up Lubavitch as a kid. He was in Lubavitch later, and you'll hear how Litvish is. He has 4 sons-in-law. One was Rabbi Avram Trop, Rabbi Naftali Trop's son. Another was Levinson, the Chafetz Chaim's grandson. Another one was Siegel. I don't know if you know Nachum Siegel, that whole family of Siegels. And then my great grandfather Poupko. So they were all they were very Litvish, but also connected to Lubavitch. And then what happened was when the Iron Curtain came down, there were not many Rabbonim who stayed behind. And so my great-grandfather Eliezer Poupko stayed, and he was in touch with the Frierdiker Rebbe. There's a letter the Frierdiker wrote about their meeting in St. Petersburg, where he told my great-grandfather that he's going for Mesiras Nefesh, meaning he was ready to die to keep Yiddishkeit alive. And by the way, that's the secret to Chabad. The secret to Chabad is things like that, where he said he's going up Mesiras Nefesh. So that's the way to go. And then my great-grandfather's sister in St. Louis, I don't know if you know the Raskis family, they were very wealthy and they helped get him. Actually, his first trip when the Frierdiker Rebbe came to America, his first trip after New York was to St. Louis. And he said that my great aunt Raskis, he ate in her house. He said she'd be the only person he eats at her home outside of his own home. And then my own grandfather Rabbi Poupko was in touch with the Rebbe throughout the whole Soviet jury issue. So I think we've been very, very blessed to have this shaykhus, the Chabad, while still maintaining our own Litvish identity. But it wasn't born today. It comes from generations of
right. And my understanding also is that you all had I think a strong kesher to the Chafetz Chaim, right? The Radin.
Yeah. The Chafetz Chaim's last name was Poupko, and even though he was also in Litvish Jewry, he was very beloved and fond of Chabad, and so yeah, the Chafetz Chaim's last name was Poupko, and Yitzchak Poupko, who married a Schneerson, he learned. He was actually the picture of the Chafetz Chaim's Levaya. He was a close talmid of the Chafetz Chaim at the time. And he was one of the Noisei Oren, and then my other great uncle, who was much more Litvish, Savitsky. I don't know if you know, there was one of them is Rosh Yeshiva in Tarvadas, but he was a Rav near Boston or in Boston. Yeah. So that was my great uncle. So anyhow, they were all somehow connected in one way or another.
Mm-hmm. Now your when did you start your writing at Times for Israel? When did you more the political greater Jewish? When did you start writing about that?
You see, there's a writer. His name is Isaac Bashevis Zinker. He was a great Yiddish writer, and he said that a good writer is not someone who writes well. It's someone who's not able to not write. So sometimes you have it in you, you feel it, and you just want to get it out there. So I think that's what it is.
And have you found what's been the response to your writing in the Times of Israel?
It depends on the issue. Some issues people are very passionate about. And one article that I got very widespread within Chabad response was I wrote that that Chabad put us to shame. What do I mean? I mean, meaning I'm Litvish and I hold by the Shita and I hold by the Derech. And I said they're putting us to shame. Why? Because every time I need to help someone, who do I call in the local? I call Chabad. Every time someone needs a chesed, I call Chabad. Every time I'm saying we're also mitzvah. Bikur cholim, all these mitzvahs, achnos asorchem bikur cholim. These are also things that we're obligated in. So how did it become that these are mitzvahs that one department of Judaism does and we don't? So in a way it's a bizoyan for us. And actually that someone got in touch with a Rebbe for the yeshiva I went to complain about it, because it was basically saying that we're not doing as good as Chabad. But it's unfortunately it's true that many mitzvahs that are a mitzvah of every single yid, we just assume, you call someone, you say, oh, I have someone, he's in prison, did you speak to Chabad yet? So it should be that you should speak to any yid, but it's amazing that Chabad do it. The most extraordinary moment of this was there was once a natural disaster. I forgot what, the Israeli Foreign Ministry was not operating. And the official Israeli Foreign Ministry put out a notice: if you're stuck outside Israel with no passport, please contact your local Chabad house. It's like a branch of the government, because they relied on people being helped. So I think in a sense they put us all to shame in their Mesiras Nefesh. It's a good thing to have a group we always look up to.
I want to ask you now two other things. One is, have you ever come across a Chabad Chassid that you saw that he was a real Talmid Chacham? In other words, I'm asking if you ever had a chance to experience real Yediyas HaTorah on the highest level from a Chabad.
So the question is really a question to you, because the question is, who would you consider a Chabad Chassid? I had this chus of knowing Rav Zalman Nechemia Goldberg. He was Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach's son-in-law, and I think was born in Minsk or Pinsk. It was the
Yes.
Beis Din of the Beis Din in Yerushalayim.
Yes, I know of him. Yes,
and he was a Chabad family, and he was the sort of Chabad that you don't really know today, where they're unidentifiable, right? So he's from Minsk, he's from Belarus. He learned in Ponovich. He was, I think, their first class, but he considered himself Chabad in many ways.
What about someone in America or in Canada?
Look, in general, the level of scholarship is the Kimetzi and Tetzei Torah, and it's usually much higher in Eretz Yisrael. I'm told we moved recently to New Haven. I'm told there's a Rabbi Kalman's in there. That's a very big Talmid Chacham.
Yes, he is.
A lot of times when I'm writing a shtickle Torah, I'll look something up online, and there's a tremendous amount of chidushim from Chabad yeshivas. So yeah, it's definitely out there. And
the reason I bring it up is because in the Litvish world, the general attitude towards Chasidus B'chlal is they can't and they don't know how to really learn. Good Rabbi Chaim Brisker is only shaykh to the Litvish, and within the Litvaks, the Brisker, the truth be told, you mentioned Rabbi Kalmuson. He's only one out of many that are big Talmidei Chachamim, and there's some that would be the head of Koilim and Rosh Yeshivas in a Litvish yeshiva that I know in Chabad. And I'm mentioning it because one of the ways to bridge or bring people together is from the perspective of the Olam Halitoi, the Litvish world. Torah is the parameter, the paradigm. Yediyas HaTorah, learning in Torah, and it's important to know that even in 770, I could tell you, go in there on a regular day, there are hundreds of bacharim learning from the morning till the evening in a very serious way. So that's why I mentioned it. The other thing I wanted to ask is, one of the things I've been talking to Rabbi Rakefet about over the last few years, and it's resurfaced now, when Rabbi Moshe Weinberger was Mashgiach Ruchni and Mashpia at the Yeshiva University based Medrash from 2013 to COVID 2020, and I interviewed him, spoke to him about this. He told me he still sees results today. So my question is, from your vantage point, do you see a day when, at least at Yeshiva University, they will have a seder in Chasidus? I don't know if Chabad Chassidus, Shluchim Chassidus, other Chassidus. I would like to hear a few words about that from you.
So there's two parts here. There's Yeshiva University, which, by the way, has a very strong Chabad presence, very strong Chabad club. They have a rabbi there, Rabbi Reichman, who's very enthusiastic about Chabad. He's a close talmud of Rabbi Yosheber.
Yes.
And I think there's I think they have Thursday night sushi and Tanya. There's all that going.
You're up to date. You're up to date.
Yeah. Look, I come informed. So
Yes.
the other issue is in terms of yeshivas, I think there's a huge generational shift. It used to be Chabad Bochrim went to the Mir Yeshiva and other yeshivas, and I think today, because every sect is so big, you don't have in generals there's no crossover and no exchange of ideas between Chabad, and by the way, which is why I'm also very appreciative to you for doing this. I think there's a very, very, very little amount of ideas exchanged between any group. Satmar, Chabad, Litvish, we've all become big enough to just mind our own business, and that's not necessarily a good thing. In terms of the Gadlus Batur and the Litvish world, I can tell you in America, I got some flack for writing this. I hate to say this, but and I'm not saying this dafka Litvish could be across the board. There's an epidemic of amaratzis. It's I spoke to a guy in Lakewood. I said to him, how many guys in Lakewood finished Chumash Rashi? The whole thing. There's a lot that didn't. And that's a horror. I mean, since the Maharal of Prague, you have the complaints of Gedolim about the lack of the Kiyus Batura, and I think that something spectacular happened in the past 30 years in terms of the numbers of people studying, but in terms of people who are Torah giants and very knowledgeable, I think that I'll be an equal opportunity offender here and say that there's just extraordinary amaratzis. We have literally hundreds of thousands of people learning, and when I have a question in learning and I need to send it to, there's nobody I can even think about who's easy, to I got a lot of flack for writing this. I wrote this in different ways. Someone told me they called the Beis Hoira in Lakewood. So Beis Hoira is supposed to be all your Moirei Hoira. He called and he says, what's the halacha in this case? They say better not to. He says better not to, that I know myself. But better avoid this, avoid us. I don't need a guy to tell me that in a Beis Hoira. I need to know what the halacha is. I think we have in general something we all can aspire to improve, that the amaratzis in America especially, but in this generation is pretty unfortunately very rampant.
Okay, but how does this, what you're telling me now, address my question of, will Chassidus ever, the study of Chassidus, not the social aspect, not the Ma'asim Tovim and Chesed, the study of Torah's Habal Shem Tov, will it ever become an accepted thing in the Litvish world?
I think in America, there's actually a demographic answer to that. It's much more likely to happen in America than in Eretz Yisrael. So when I was in yeshivas in Eretz Yisrael, you did not see a gartel. If a guy had a gartel, he was embarrassed, he hid it under. And I was actually shocked when I came to America and I see lots of guys putting on gartel before mincha. And part of it is demographic, where people went after the war, which communities were able to rebuild. And since you have people like the Panovitcher of the Chazonish, who were hardcore misnagdim, rebuild Yiddishkeit in Eretz Yisrael, therefore those places became much more not only Litvish but also misnagdish, as opposed to America, where you had much more of a Rabbi Mendelovich and Rav Hutner, and you had people who are founders of Yiddishkeit as we know it here. They're much more inclined to Chasidus. So I think you have a big Eretz Yisrael America divide on this issue.
Mm-hmm. Any final things you'd like to say? Because we're winding down. We have about 2 minutes left.
I just wanted to thank you and say that it's just extraordinary to see not only the Mesiras Nefesh, but the Gemilas Chasodim that goes on in terms of what Chabad does. And it's something that we all can learn from. And the issue of what's going on now in Crown Heights is primarily for Chabad to figure out. And like I said, it's something that every single sect and organization in Judaism sympathizes with, because there's always extremists and they're usually young and they usually decide that they know better and that Isha Yosher Bein Avyasa, they can do whatever they want and they own the place. And every stream in Judaism looks and sympathizes.
Yasher Koach for your time. Thank you, Shabbat Shluchim, all of your work, and we should talk together. Greet Mashiach with Abbas Yisrael, Achdus Yisrael. We're all one, and Rebbe should bring a Nes in Yeshua for Am Yisrael. Take it from a Yad Mamish. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Yasher Koach. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.